Today, hopefully gonna figure out, we gotta start working on how to pick up more than one stone and how to move more than one stone. Because right now all we have is, if we're in move type move and we click a occupant with only one stone, it'll take it out of that place. But we still don't have a way to place it in a legal move, and we still don't have the ability to pick up more than one stone. So I'm thinking we need to, by default, pick up as many as 5 stones at once. So like, instead of right now just nullifying, we need to do something where we say if the occupants of the move, when we're in move type move, when we click on it, if it's 5 or smaller occupants, we pick up all of them, then nullify that dark green spot. And then if we have more than 5, only pick up 5. And then we can worry about rendering those 5 stones, up to 5 stones at the mouse position. And then we can worry about placing and how to decide how many stones to drop in each location. I'm going to turn off the sounds because I had put the sounds on. There's lute music that's playing, but I don't own the copyright for those songs, so I don't want to play them during the stream. So I guess first thing is we need to remove up to 5 occupants upon being clicked. And then we need to worry about how to get to render those stones. Gosh, I'm tired. Okay. So the legal move highlights, and this is it. This is what we want. Okay. So under the click detection, under move type move, if the grid we click on is a legal move and where occupants equals 1 and no first movement locked. Now we need these first movement locked to kind of offset whether or not we had just clicked on a stone or we have stones in our mouse cursor already. So instead of doing grid occupants equals 1, we want to say as long as the grid's occupants is smaller than 6. So 5 or less. Now, right now, we only have an occupant increment upon a placement right here. It's not even an occupant, it's not even an increment, it's just a 1 assignment, because if we're placing in an empty spot, we know the occupants need to be 1. But we need to change that, or we need to add that once we start moving stones, that however many we drop, we need to increment the occupants appropriately. And then hopefully the occupants paired with the stack order will determine the correct rendering for the pyramid-like shrinking of the top higher stones. So instead of this being only viable for occupants being 1, we're going to say occupants smaller than 6. If it's smaller than 6, then the stone or the grid we just clicked on is no longer occupied. But we need to move all of these stones into our mouse location so that we can move more than one stone. And then we're nullifying. See, it's almost like we need to grab how many occupants are in there so that we can one by one nullify all the members. If we take a look at our members, all we really have is a stack order, a stone color, and a stone type. X and Y is kind of tethered to the occupant XY, so at least I think it is. I don't know off the top of my head. Gosh. Okay. Then we swap. We are no longer no movement locked. We are first movement locked, and then we have to do something where we say if. How would we decide that our turn is over? We decide that if there are no legal moves left, or we dropped all of our stones, our last remaining stones, into a spot. So we'll have to, this is like the click, this is the click to begin the movement, but not to place the movement. And that's gonna get confusing because our move type move and move type place. So we'll have to come up with some lingo to make that less confusing. But I feel like we need to, since we need to nullify up to 5 stones, members dot stone color, stone type, stack control, and not just stack control, but stack order is actually what we want. Now the occupant gets nullified stack control, which is true, but we need to modify the members field of stack order to be nil as well. Now I think that might be what was screwing. I was just testing around, and as soon as I had clicked on a move type move and then reset the board, it never reset where I could place things properly again. So that's something I'm going to need to fix. I'm not exactly sure what's causing that to bug out, but I feel like it has to do something with something I'm not overriding when I press R. And it could be the stack order, could be stack control. We just have to test that out, I guess. And then we no longer make that a legal move, so we don't highlight it anymore. But then what are we triggering? How are we triggering the dark green highlight? So we take a look. It's a legal move highlight, so we don't flip. We flip legal move highlight based on legal move. And legal move is set up here, higher above. Where is it? We do flush our legal move highlight, but where do we, oh, we do it right here. And this is just, we're not asking whether or not no move is locked or first move is locked or anything. So we might need to modify that. See, because it says move 1 legal highlights. So we need to do something where we grab, once we click, if it's a legal move and the occupants is smaller than 6 and we don't have our first movement locked, then we need to grab and store the amount of occupants so we can cycle through and nullify all these things. Because actually, shit. That's not exactly what we want to do, because we could pick up 5 stones, default to picking up 5 stones, and then drop 4 of them back in their exact same spot. So I feel like we should only nullify it's getting confusing. It's getting so confusing. Do we just not render them until we lock in first movement? Is that the move? We don't render any members until our first movement is locked. And the thing is, the first movement locked doesn't actually move us. It's actually just becoming first movement lock true upon a click in a legal move on a move type move turn. So our first movement isn't really locked. Our first movement selection is locked. What do we use this first movement locked for elsewhere? We do it here, where if our move type is move and our first move is locked, then we render the stone at the mouse location. I don't like this whole body of code here, because this is all repeats from this is just rendering just like our members are rendering. So stone type fill, rectangle circle fill, rectangle circle fill depending on the stones and depending on the color. Yeah, okay. See, and this is Jack 2, where we're rendering based on the player, not based on the stone that we just picked up, which comes out correct because you can only pick a color that's in your control, but I don't like that we're doing it based on player instead of on the stone. Yeah, we need to fix this. Oh, see, look, we left ourselves a note, all needs to go, and become rendering based on the mouse stone class or local variable. Yeah, we need to do that. Oh, lordy. I've been feeling sick to my stomach for a week straight, and it's not a great feeling. Okay, I think for now, I'm gonna switch this instead of first movement locked. Just make sure we don't use this anywhere else. Yeah, we don't. First movement highlight locked, because it's not, so I mean, what's a better way to name that? It's not that we locked in our first movement, is that we locked in our first movement place, or our movement origin locked. That's good, because then, yeah, movement origin locked, I like that. Movement origin locked, and that's the grid where we locked in our movement, but it's not our first movement. We do need a first movement locked as well. So when we go to first movement locked, we're actually checking if we're movement origin locked or not. And then upon clicking and we're not movement origin locked, if it's a legal move, then we become no longer, or we become true in the movement origin locked. And then for right now, our render is if our movement origin locked, then we render depending on our player, which this all needs to go. We need to fix this and rehaul this. So I guess next let's try to nullify. No, fuck. It's not quite that we have to do this just yet. Because if we pick up, let's say there's 5 stones, we click on them, all 5 would follow the cursor, and then we can use our arrows to drop as many stones as we don't want, and those stones need to be appropriately placed. So we can go about this 2 ways. We can either nullify that space as soon as we have a movement origin locked. If our occupants is less than 6, then we can, as long as we keep track of the right stack order, when we drop the stones, it'll replace them in their respective positions. And then when you place the stones you don't want to move and highlight over a legal move, once you click on that, then it would dump. I guess then it would be like a second movement place locked, whatever you want to call it, and then you have to decide how many to drop, because you could pick up 5, drop 4 in that origin space, or drop 2 in that origin space, so you have 3 in your hand. Then you highlight over, then you need to drop 2 and then click, and then is that when you lock in the move? Upon clicking after you've dropped the stones, which probably should be it. Instead of clicking the direction, then dropping the stones, then highlighting, I think it makes more sense to you drop the stones that you don't want to move, then you drop the stones you don't want to move, then you highlight the legal move, and upon the highlight you drop stones without clicking. Then if you hover off that stone, it'll reset your stone stack, I feel like. Shoot. Oh, it's so confusing. So yeah, we got to decide if we're doing a class or some local variables to kind of keep track of these stones that are going to be at our mouse. I guess let's do my initial gut, which is like we're going to nullify the whole stack, because I don't want to be leaving objects in there and depending on the renderer or the booleans only render it. I think it makes most sense to literally move all the objects. Does it make more sense? I don't know. Because if we nullify everything and then place them upon dropping the stones back in their movement origin spot, it's like we're nullifying everything and then re-upping it back to its current position from the mouse location. It doesn't. Does that make sense compared to just leaving all of them in the grid and then only changing those and only changing the render based on what is pressed? I feel like the changing based on render is too much. I feel like keeping it simple where like the actual occupants get moved with the mouse, and then the mouse dictates how much gets dropped in the given space. Jesus, okay. So let's do a thing where we say or clicked in a legal move, it'll be our movement origin locked click. And if the occupants is smaller than 5 or smaller, 5 or smaller, we need to remove everything. Sorry, guys. I feel sick to my stomach. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is to not hard code this in at 1. We need to erase everything. But we only want to erase anything that's kind of been written to. So it depends on the occupants. And the number of occupants is our max number of members that needs to get overwritten. So what we need to do is say and we're also not, so our occupants, this dot occupants is just a boolean in our occupant class. Yes, not a boolean, an integer. So we can take that number that we get from this occupants and say, do a for loop for I gets the value of however many occupants. No, it's I gets the value of 1. I feel like it needs to get 0. Because if there's 1 occupant, the for loop needs to run just once. I don't know. Let's do 1 for now. I gets 1, comma, total occupants. So I'm trying to do it for like for an amount of occupants. So if it's 1, I guess the question is for if we do for I gets 1, comma 1 do that, would that run once or run nothing? Because it's in C it's a little more verbose there, but it's just the value, well, yeah, what does Lua even call it? Because like in C it's initialization, condition, increment, which makes a lot of sense. But then in Lua here, what do they call it? They call it a init max value increment. And if you leave out the increment, it defaults to 1. So the max value so 10, 1 minus 1 will give you 10 numbers. So I feel like 1, comma 1 would give you 1 number. So we would start at 1, and if the occupants is 1, it should be okay. Should still run once. So we're going to nullify, and actually we need to move all these values to our mouse variables. So now we do members I. Instead of 1, we nullify all of the stone types and stone colors, but before this we need to move these values. Move all 5 occupants to mouse position. Should probably do that very first, because we don't want to chance missing any of that detail, any of those values. So I guess now we need to decide if we are going to do a class to keep track of all the mouse occupants that we're copying, or if we just do some local variables to control it. Gosh, I feel sick. Let's take a look at the values in our occupant class. Now, anything we need to move, or we need to keep track of. Yeah, I don't think we need to keep track of anything from the occupants other than the number of occupants and the members table. So the members table is what gets populated with all the members and their stack order. So we kind of need to cycle through. See, and this is confusing now too, because if we're just doing one occupant, we would be no. Yeah, we do something similar. We can do the same kind of deal, because I was worried about rendering any nil members. So we only want to, for our amount of occupants, we need to take each member all the useful member information and save it into our local variable, I guess, for our mouse control. So it's like we need to move it. So if we call it mouse stones, we don't have a mouse stones already, right? But we need to move. Oh gosh. We need to, I think we do need another class. Oh, no. We can literally use an occupant class and fill it with members and place it at our stone position. So we can use our occupant class. We just have to assign it to be an instantiation of a members class and then access its members table at the occupant index and populate the appropriate values. And we only have 3 values to track. We need the stone color, the stone type, and the stack order. So where do we initialize occupants to be in grid spaces, but instead of the occupant being at a grid space, we need an occupant being at the mouse location. Yeah. That's a better way to do it. Because then we can do the same thing, and this is where we can fix our render here. We're on this toggle mouse stone. Instead of asking what the player is and setting the color, and asking what the stone select is and setting the appropriate render, we populate our occupant class that is always at our mouse location. We populate that upon the selection. You know, if it's place, we populate it depending on the player and depending on the stone select. But if it's move, we would, if it's move, yeah, until our movement origin is locked, or when our origin movement is locked, then we would, instead of doing it by player, we would probably do it based on whatever the, we would just need to populate the occupant class at our mouse location with the correct values. And then, yeah, gosh, it's so hard to wrap my head around this. Okay. I think that's the right move, though. I think giving us an occupant class, because if we were to have made a new class, it would be all the same stuff that's in a member. And if we just use an occupant, then we already have our members built in the table. We would need to cycle through just like we do here and give our mouse occupant nullified members. But shoot, yeah. Oh God. We need to update all the members in our mouse stone to follow the mouse every frame. Oy. I'm gonna try this new thing where instead of feeling like I'm powerless when it's a really complicated thing that I haven't figured out yet, I'm gonna feel like it's really simple and all we gotta do is break it down one piece by piece and it's easy. So easier said than done, though. Yeah, I'm not gonna make much more progress, man. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. We're starting to do these things. This is all gonna be broken. I don't think this is gonna compile. Not really compile because it's a scripted language, but yeah. It's not gonna run because we just have busted it. It's not gonna run for a little while until we fix those things, I think. Well, no, it'll run. Okay, it does still run. So that's good. It's not completely busted. And it looks like we are nullifying the stone correctly. So at least it's not busted. I'm gonna leave us a note for next time. Migrate all mouse stone renders to an occupant that holds appropriate members. Render and update this occupant this mouse stone occupant. Every delta time. That's what we got to do next. And then once we got that, because it's like we got to redo where we were having the mouse render the stone, which was here where we said all needs to go. We need to redo all of this based on the occupants for our mouse stone occupant now. The members for our mouse stone occupant now. We need to give ourselves a mouse stone variable that holds an occupant that holds members, and depending on what move type we're in, we populate that occupant table with the appropriate members, and then we render the mouse stone occupant instead of rendering a rectangle at the mouse's location. Because we're duplicating all this code. We're duplicating all this just like it's in here. So we really don't need to do this. And then if we do it this way, then if we have a stack, then we're actually rendering based on the stack order, because the occupant class holds instantiations of members that take in a stack order. So it'll actually scale with rendering things instead of right now, which is just rendering a single stone, which is all we were trying to do until we're now at the point where we're doing multiple stones. So it's just going to be a process of undoing the temporary solution and implementing the scalable solution. So yeah, we made a little progress. We've got a new movement origin locked instead of the first movement locked. We still got that because we need to do that still, but not here. We need to do it upon another click in a legal move that would lock in the first move. And then we would need to add dropping keyboard detection for dropping stones in origin space, unless they wanted to move all 5, and that's just a game decision where I think I'm making it where you pick up the max amount of numbers of stones, because in the game you don't really pick them up one by one. You pick up all 5 and go pop, pop, pop. So it kind of makes sense in my brain to pick up 5. And then if you only want to move 1, you have to drop. You like pick up 5, drop all but 1, then move it. Because I feel like the good moves in this game are when you have and you pick up more than, you pick up all 5 or whatever. So I guess we're prioritizing that for smooth sailing instead of prioritizing a one move stack. Because and thinking about the game, you don't, if you're going to be moving a stack, you're probably not going to be moving just one, because you would lose control if the next player's there. So if you've got another one there, you might move it, but it's not so common. So I think this is the way to do it. Pick up all 5, decide how many you're going to drop, and then lock in your second space, which also locks in the direction of movement, and then it'll lock in the legal moves, and then it'll render hopefully the appropriate stones stacked upon the mouse location so that you can see it kind of drop across. And we're going to be rendering all the occupants in the pyramid that you take it from, and they are not going to dynamically change once you drop, meaning like if you pick up 5, drop all but 1 or all but 2, instead of the bottom stone in your mouse stone's occupant being the full square, the next one being the 10 pixels shorter, it's going to stay the shrunk 5th pixel. And then when you place it, it'll size according to how many occupants are already in that space. Because I don't want to play that dynamically resizing game. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, gosh, I feel sick. We got something done today, so that's good. I'm just gonna say in our commit that we're just starting this is all the code we changed, which it's not nothing. And we've got some brainstorming done, so I'm gonna git add everything, say we started migration of mouse stones. No, that's what the next step is. What we really did was move max of 5 members out of movementOriginLock zone. That's all we really did. And we're starting to implement. Next episode's going to be implementing the mouse stone occupant to keep track of all the appropriate data we just moved from that movementOriginLock space. So very complicated, but this is the meat and potatoes of the game. Once we get stack moving, it's going to be easy to, I say this now, but I think it's going to be easy to figure out the win state, and that's basically the end of the game once we got, because you can only do 2 things. You can place a stone or you can move a stack of stones. So once we figure out the moving of stack of stones, we just need to figure out the road logic, if it's a successful road for a win state, and then tally up our points. Then bonus credit is placing your opponent's piece at the very beginning, and then maybe we can add a little mini game where it spins to, or you can put in player name and then it'll spin flip a coin or whatever and decide for you who's what color and tell you on the screen, like, hey, balls move or whatever. I think that'd be fun. So that would be all the bonus extra credit once we're done with the movement stack logic. But yeah, one step at a time.